in your opinion, the biggest challenge for a lot of these companies to be able to submit for grants? And
Not knowing what they don't know.
Welcome to episode 28 of the Crownsman podcast. My name is Jared Downey, and Gowdy says I'm no longer allowed to introduce her. So,
that is not what I said, but okay. I am Gaudi Molina.
what you said? I said your name wrong, or is it, was there
No.
what was the reason?
I was joking.
You weren't joking.
I was joking. I said you weren't pronouncing my last name like it.
It's
Like it
supposed to
should-
be,
it's
so that's called wrong. So
You
I
weren't
got to
pu- you weren't
practice.
putting the accent. on
So
it.
I've got to practice the name,
Okay.
and
yeah.
once I get it right, then I'm
Then
allowed to
y-
introduce you
exactly.
again. All
There
right.
you go.
We have a financially technical show
Yes.
today because, and we've had people from real estate and the finance world come on the show, and the shows are actually always been quite popular because anybody who's watching our shows knows the primary topic is mining, energy, transportation, a little bit of manufacturing, a little bit of forestry, all that sort of anything heavy industry. But anybody in those industries is dealing with the financial side, the property side, the accounting side obviously is a major component.
Yep.
And so we try to bring people in who are experts in those fields because I think our audience needs that extra bit of information. So today we have actually KPMG on, which is a massive firm. So we're very happy to have them on the show. And Jacqueline
Gustafsson.
Gustafsson. There's no way. There's no.
This is why you don't say my
Yeah.
last name.
Well, the thing, this is what happened here though, is I know someone named Gustafsson. So I was like, oh, this is an easy name. I've got it. I practiced it for a couple days. I
And
was
then you
ready.
find
And then
out.
this morning, I was like, oh no.
It's wrong.
But Jacqueline's going to be on the show to talk about this is actually incentive programs that are offered to companies in various parts of industry, including technology, manufacturing, which does go into mining, energy, and everything. So
Yep.
it's going to be a lot of information that is very relevant to you, the audience. So please stay with us. We're going to release highlights of the episode for
Yep.
specific parts. It'll be helpful. A lot of good information. So I hope you stay tuned with us and unpack the information. First off, sponsors who help us keep the show going.
Yes.
Who are they today, Gowdy?
We've got Savannah Equipment. If you need anything from slurry pumps to jaw crushers to ball mills to conveyors, go to the leader in used mining equipment, Savannah Equipment, where you will find more equipment every day. Visit them at savannahequipment.com. We also have Sean Daly, who is promoting his book, From the Erksberg to Potosi, A History of Geology and Mining Since the 1500s. This book traces the history of mining and geology from the 1500s in the valuable silver mines of the Erksberg Mountains of eastern Germany to the rich silver mines of Bolivia, including Potosi. And the book, you can find it on Amazon, and we'll place the links in the description below for you. So yeah, please go check out the book written by Sean Daly.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to get straight into it. Jacqueline, thank you for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Have you done one of these before?
No,
Lights,
never.
cameras.
No.
It's
It's all new.
it's a different experience.
It
You know,
is,
but
absolutely.
like we talked about off air,
Excuse me.
the nice thing about this show is that people are looking for technical information, and they want to be walked through this stuff. So you being an expert in, and I want to talk a little bit about where your expertise with KPMG and sort of couple that in with what we're talking about here. So sort of what's your role and what is these are kind of grants, incentive programs and everything. So can you give us sort of an overview of what it is we're actually going to unpack today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my job is to find money for companies, which is always fun
Mm-hmm.
because people are always, or companies are always looking for money or trying to access some either grants or funding or tax credits, depending on their position. So it's interesting to find out that the federal government is making some changes to to be able to access that for some of the companies. So what we're going to talk about today is some examples about some of the actual funding programs that are out there, whether they're grants, whether repayable contributions, and we may get into a little bit as to which one is which and why would people want to access them.
Right. And who do these apply to? We're in are these any companies anywhere, or are these how specific does it get? These are manufacturing,
Yeah, so it could
sciences.
be absolutely. So it could be whether you are a company in remote BC that is looking to grow your business or that is looking for resources to mining, forestry, clean tech, to any really industry across Canada. As long as you're a Canadian incorporated company, you're able to access any of the grants or the funding available.
Right. Okay. So, and how are these new, or have these been in place, and do they get tweaked, or are these type of programs, do they go back 30 years, or is it how much of it's new, or how much of the funding has been increased in general?
Absolutely. So some of them do go back quite far. Most people are familiar with the Scientific Research Experimental Development Tax Credit Program. That is
Hmm.
also a refund, so it's SR&ED for short. Also, IRAP, Industry Research Assistance Program. If you're in a specific industry, then you go, for example, agriculture, then there's very specific programs that have been around for a long time. But they are being revamped. The federal government has indicated that instead of having a myriad of programs across Canada and provincially, that they're going to try to funnel them into a bit more of an organized manner, so that each of the funds gets a little bit more money instead of being diluted by these smaller regional funding.
Oh, okay. So I want to sort of move into we're gonna really unpack it later. Um, but the overall goal of the government providing this funding on a general term, like I saw on you sent me some slides, so I saw sort of there's a Canada and a global, it's almost like a ranking,
Yeah.
and we can bring that up on the screen. I think it's slide 2. Um, we can keep going while we've got this. And so it's sort of a ranking system of where uh, Canada is. So is the goal of this is to essentially just move Canada higher? Is that
Exactly. Yeah. So the federal government wants to make sure that Canada is seen as an innovation hub or as an innovation country where they are fostering innovation through the help of some of the funding programs for companies. And whether you're, again, a small company that really has a tremendous idea and they're trying to accelerate their own internal innovation, to larger companies that need to stay in Canada for them to be obviously have increase of jobs and increasing the economical or the economic environment of Canada.
right? And that's actually something I wanted to get sort of out of the way right off the top, because somebody watching this who's got a company of 3 people or 10 people or 50, anything below the 200 essentially is a small business, a small enterprise. Does it become very difficult for a smaller company to access these kind of funds?
I would say no, and depending on what they're looking for. Smaller companies we're really looking at, they're trying to get some grants for hiring people, or there's the apprenticeship tax credits that are very popular in the manufacturing sort of trades area. And so those companies are able to access that. The apprenticeship tax credit is a credit that's $2,000 a year for anybody that is in one of the SEAL programs or the ITA programs. And so that's very beneficial to them. And that could be a small company or it could be a larger company as well.
Right.
So absolutely not. I think that any of the companies can access them. It really depends on what they're looking for and how much they're looking for.
Right. Now, what about things like on the manufacturing side though, like the technology that if someone wants to update their technology, you have a large company, and large companies have been on our show, and we love having them on the show. But there is always this thing with a large company, what they can afford to do versus small. So on the manufacturing side to update your actual technology, is it accessible? And we'll get into a few examples, but is it accessible to a smaller company?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the same program would be accessible to a smaller company. There are some funding programs that are only eligible for or only available for companies that are 500 or less. They will
Oh,
not look at the larger companies for those specific programs. There's other federal programs that we'll discuss that they are definitely open to anybody. So you could be small, you could be large, but that 500 limit is really what they're looking at
right.
in some funds. And some of those are specifically directly related to increasing productivity, increasing innovation.
Right. Okay. Well, we should. So I want to get into some of those
Yeah,
specifically because it's
absolutely.
definitely a portion of our audience that are the small business and manufacturing. So, but first, let's. I want to get a little more of your background, so I'm going to swing this over to Gowdy, and just talk about sort of where you're coming from, how you've got to be here in the position you are, and sort of the expertise you have in this industry.
I think you just asked all my questions.
What can I say?
No,
Well,
yes.
you're going to break down those.
The questions. Okay, yes. I wanted to know, yeah, before we get into this, what is your background? How did you start with KPMG?
So my background is mechanical engineering, actually.
Oh, interesting.
And I worked out in industry for a number of years in a manufacturing facility. The company was acquired, and we went through 7 integrations of manufacturing facilities across the US and Canada. So it was very exciting. We had to deal with ARP, we had to deal with engineering, bringing in on board drawings that were really literally 80 to 90 years old of manufacturing. And it was very exciting because I learned a tremendous amount. So anything from system integration to IP related issues to cross-border intricacies that happen. It was an international company, so then I had to travel to Australia to Austria quite a bit. Germany. I presented in a number of technical conferences, so it was very exciting. But then it just became too big, and I know this sounds pretty odd because now I'm KPMG, and KPMG is huge. But KPMG was helping out with the SR&ED program with the company I was with, and I just needed a change. I had been there for a while. Met my husband through that company. I kind of decided that I needed to kind of leave. And then KPMG asked if I would be interested. After I left, they asked if I would be interested in coming along and just helping out with some of the SR&ED program. And I just sort of said no because I didn't really want to be a consultant. I really liked the being in the field, and I really liked all of the cost accounting that was related to the projects that we were managing on the field and looking at the people and whatnot. But I thought I'd give it a try, and I haven't looked back since. So it's been really interesting. I get to speak with a number of clients in a number of industries, not just necessarily manufacturing, but we also have some health clients and some energy clients. Right now, clean tech is a big deal, so we're definitely helping out a lot of the clients and accessing this funding that's available to them when they really don't know what the fine print means for them. And so then some of our clients come and say, "Oh, I heard of this fund. I want to apply for it. I want all those dollars." And we kind of have to go back and say, "Well, actually, no, you're not eligible for it, or it's not open, or it will open next year," or just trying to make sense of it. I think is a great value for our clients.
Wow, interesting. And you've been with KPMG 13 years, correct?
I have, yes.
Long time.
Yes.
Can you take us back a little bit further than that and kind of where you started before any of this?
So I'm originally from Mexico City. And I grew up in, both my parents were very technical, so they were both involved in the aerospace industry.
Oh.
And so I grew up in a mechanical environment, helping both parents sort of go in there. We played, my brother and my sister and I, we would just play in the maintenance hangar for, no daycare. So that's what you did. And in Mexico is very different than here. So my dad had family up here, and we decided that, or my mom decided that we would move. And so we moved, and then they moved back. So they left us here.
Oh, no.
They couldn't stand the winters, and then they moved back. And the rest is history. We started our education, all 3 of us, and have families, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So definitely mechanical engineering and all this industry has always been kind of part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, aerospace is really kind of has a soft spot, or I have a
Yeah.
soft spot for aerospace. We do a lot in that space. I have private pilot training as well, which is
Ah.
really exciting, but I have not flown in 20 years, I
Oh.
think.
Oh, wow.
Why? Why
I
not?
know. Why?
It's just
I'd be
expensive. I
flying
have
all
a
the
family, I have a
Yeah.
job. It just life
Yeah.
gets too crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, I would have never thought, you know, private pilot lessons.
Yeah,
That's
I
crazy.
never talk about myself.
Well, this is the place to do it. Okay, now with KPMG, and you work with so many clients, how is that?
Mhm.
Dealing. Well, I guess not dealing, but to be able to interact with clients compared to what you were doing before.
Yeah, so I think that we're always learning when we speak with clients and when we go out and see them. Is really neat to identify what they're doing, whether it's on the technical side or on the business piece. So the business piece is really the interesting part, because you find out, so how are you doing financially, and where do you want to be, and what do you need to get there, and could we help out in anything? The sort of the piece that ties it all together is that we're able to then provide them help on the financial forecast that they're required for some of these programs. So although the programs are there and they have a mechanism of getting the financial information from our clients, they really need to be in a format that speaks to what the government is looking at. So even though the government is willing to provide some of the funds for our clients to come up with a project, or provide some funding for co-ops or trainees or whatnot, they need to make sure that the company is financially viable. And so how do we do that? So financial statements, balance sheets that are required, making sure that all of their tax returns are completed and filed, things like that our clients may not necessarily think about when they're accessing or trying to access these grants. And so I see that as being a really key piece in us to trying to help them access that. And it could be, we're helping a company right now with 4 different funding programs. There's 2 federal and then the 2 provincial ones, and they've received all of them. But the key piece is you need to make sure that the bottom line at the end of the day adds up. So you can double dip. That's one of the other elements behind these grants, that you are able to receive funding for a project, but you can receive 4 times the amount of the project total cost. And so then how do you make sense of, okay, this grant is going to be for this grant's going to be for that.
Right.
Okay, if we're not going to use the money, then we have to go back and tell them, okay, we're not going to need it this year, we're going to need it in the following year, the funds are running out. And so the exciting part for me working at KPMG is, one, I get to find out what people are doing. It's all very confidential stuff, but it is really neat to identify what they're doing and just sort of be at the brink of that innovation, but as well as help them through the process. And then, like I mentioned before, just really that fine line. So what is that, the fine print that they need to know before they actually hit, send on the application or apply?
Right.
I just have a quick question on that. How difficult is it for them to do it themselves? Like, if they have, how often do you see a company trying to file those applications, hitting the send button, and is it even possible to do it independently?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we try to help. So whether you are wanting to do it by yourself as a company and you have somebody, now we see that a lot. We see that they will hire a student or maybe someone at a lower level to help them put the application together, gather all the details of the project. A lot of the applications are project based, and so gather those specific technical details that are required for the project. And then they come to us and they can say, can you just give it a quick review? Can you just have a quick review? We'll take care of it all, but can you do that? There's some funding programs that are not do not allow a third party to be involved. And we would tell our clients, look, these are great, you should apply for them. We're not able to be involved, but we will help you through the process, like whatever process that you need, as far as just answering questions and if they just need a quick review of the application beforehand. But we would definitely let them know that there are some funding programs that we're not able to help or submit on their behalf. So the answer to the question is yes, they can do it by themselves, or they can ask for as much help as they need from us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, What would be, in your opinion, the biggest challenge for a lot of these companies to be able to submit for grants? And
Not knowing what they don't know. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think it's with any industry and with any element is you don't know what you don't know, so then you don't access what you don't know that exists out there.
Right.
And so it's exciting to help people try to find their way through these. Some of the time we do get clients that say, I don't know what's out there and I don't really know what I want, but tell me what is out there. So that's a little bit different because we can obviously cannot pinpoint what may be
Yeah.
available. We, in general terms, and some of the ones that we can discuss here, they're available, they know that they're there, and at least they're aware that there's some funding programs available. And then they come back when they have a project or when they have some expenditures that they're able to then submit for a potential grant or repayable contribution or whatever it may be. And then they'll come back and say, okay, now I have a project, this is what I'm going to do. Is there anything available?
have you ever encountered any, or what's the hardest project you've had to help with? I know you don't have to say names, but
Yeah, so timelines, I think, is the biggest. One of the elements behind, or what we have seen in the last year, is that funding programs open and close extremely quick. And so they will, for example, there was one that was announced June 1st or June 3rd, I think it was, whatever that Monday was. And then it closed for initial applications this last Monday. And so that was an extreme tight line. And so to answer your question, there was one that was a significant amount of money. The client came to us and they said, we have a draft of the application, we need to submit. And it was definitely a team of 2 or 3 getting together and completing that over the weekend to be able to file it on Monday.
Wow.
We were successful, but it definitely is like it comes down to the wire sometimes. And that, although it's very exciting, but it's also very challenging because you want to make sure that submit on the behalf of your client who you're representing as well as possible, while them also being comfortable with what is being submitted. So that's a challenging part. And the second challenging part is just keeping up to date with all the funding programs.
Yeah, that must be something.
yeah, they always change.
Yes.
It's never the same. Wow, that's
So how do companies keep pace with it though? Do they? I mean, is there a website they have to check every week to see what's like? You say these short windows. If you're again a large company, I understand they have whole divisions that are dedicated to this. So that I understand. And
sometimes they don't even do that. Like sometimes even larger companies come to us and say, we need to put something together. How to help us sort of get a department going or a couple of people going to make sure that we are able to access that.
right. And then, but how do they know when it's coming out? I mean, what's the
tell them.
channel?
We tell them.
So if you don't tell them, then I mean,
don't know.
right, yeah. Or they could. I mean, it really depends. The media sometimes does have, like the provincial government does have some of announcements. Sometimes people do find out too late and then they come to us and say, can you tell me when it's going to be opened again? Or we do have a project, but we're not quite ready to submit yet. Can you help us out? It really is just a matter of communication. There's a few websites and the federal government is trying to do their best at putting together websites that are able to provide that information for clients. They're not very cumbersome, but they don't cover everything. And they're not specific to the client.
right.
And so that's the element behind them that, sure, absolutely, you can go online and you can check some of the websites that are available out there and you can put the parameters and you can get the funding programs available, which are some of the ones that we're going to talk about here. But there's the other ones that are key that are really sort of like really good, for the lack of a better word, that would be great for clients to access. And unfortunately, it may not be up on that website yet.
Yeah. They should do I have just yesterday I was driving and I couldn't listen to the Raptors game, or I couldn't watch the Raptors
Watch it.
game. So I downloaded the ESPN app. We are not sponsored by ESPN.
We're
This
not.
is anyway,
Maybe we should be.
yeah, but we would love to be.
Listening? Yeah.
Someone online actually accused us of being backed by like major oil companies or
Oh,
something
yeah.
recently. There's a lot of stuff that happens online. And
I'm sure.
so my reply to it was, I would love that,
Yeah.
please. I want to dip into that kind of money. Anyway, but the app was great because you just click in and then you got notifications based on what team you follow, what sport. That's what they should come up with. Is
And
it?
they have, so
Do
they
they have that kind of thing?
yeah, so the government does have those notifications. So for ISED, which is sort of like the overarching, I don't know, department of the government right now, innovation, science, they do have sort of, if you want to be part of their newsletter,
Yeah.
whatever, and then you can get those sort of pings back. But it's not specific to some of the programs. It is, but it's not. I think the government's definitely doing a better job at doing that. But you're right. A lot of it is just trying to find it. If you're in the manufacturing industry, then you really want to make sure that you want to keep in mind, it's, okay, so what programs were, is there anything that's kind of available? But the interesting part, and this is another kind of interesting part of the job, is that we could have a manufacturing company. So we have an agricultural company that we're working in Calgary, and they're doing a lot of work, obviously, in that space, but they also have a lot of technology behind them. So they're looking at the digital technology in the sense of helping them with what they're doing. And so, although it is an agri company, now you're talking about a tech fund or any potential tech money that's available out there.
Yeah, because you can check different
Absolutely.
categories. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I want to get into that.
Yeah,
Let's get into some of these specific projects. So we got this slide up here.
Yeah, just let me
Can,
know.
yeah, can we give just a little bit of these tax
Sure.
incentive programs? So
Yeah.
you have SR&ED. What is that on a general snapshot?
Yeah, so that's the scientific research and experimental development tax credit. That is a tax credit for technical work that people are doing, or companies are doing, for R&D. So basically, if they have an R&D arm, an R&D department, or even if it's a smaller company, but they're building a prototype of some sort for, a rig or, an extension of a rig or so on, they're able to apply for either a refund, which is really good. And that's one of the most popular programs, the SR&ED program. And that's why there's 67% of people that,
Yeah, I was
or
noticing
companies
so much
that use
higher.
it. That is the highest one.
Yeah.
So this is out of the KPMG, Canadian Manufacturers Outlook. And obviously KPMG, we have a lot of thought leadership, but that is one of the ones that we sort of heavily rely on. We go out and we interview manufacturing companies all across Canada and globally, and then we identify. So on the R&D front, and there was actually just one release, the CEO one released a couple of weeks ago. But we're looking at, so as an R&D company, or if you consider yourself as doing any kind of R&D, what are you doing? Like, how much are you doing? Are you accessing some of these incentive programs? What do you plan to do? What are you doing now? And what are you planning to do? So the SR&ED one obviously being one of the most effective ones and one of the most popular ones. And then, like I mentioned, definitely for this space is the apprenticeship tax credits, which are anything that is ITA related. I know that ITA has released some new apprenticeships. Hairdressers, I think, are now involved as well, or part of that. So hairdresser outfit, again, if it's just a company that's 5-6 people, they can also claim an apprenticeship tax if they have a hairdresser that is going through a program that's an official ITA program.
That's an official. Going back to this SR&ED, I want to jump over to, I think it's actually page 5, I think. Now, if it's not making sense where I'm going with this, just tell me, no, we have to go back
It's
to make
okay.
this.
No
But-
worries.
So under this, that one. And so there's advanced manufacturing, agri-food, health biosciences, clean technology, digital industries, resources of the future. Now, does all that, is there incentive now is that connected to the SR&ED?
SR&ED,
Yeah.
So the SR&ED program is industry agnostic. So anybody in any company, in any sort of area in Canada
Right.
and provincially is able to access it as long as they meet the criteria. So the criteria is that there needs to be some obviously technically or technological or science-based behind
Right.
the work that they're doing. So, a very easy example is, car manufacturers right now, everybody has a red color. They're all red. if you're going to come up with a red color and somebody else is going to come up with a red color, well, that's kind of known, right? Like a lot of people are doing that. The pigmentation behind it, the coloring behind it, the drying effect, and all sorts of stuff. That's really known. So that's kind of available in the public domain. If you're a hobby car person as well, then you can go online and read, okay, well, I want to paint it, I need to prime it, I need to sand, I need to do all these kinds of things. But now let's take that knowledge a little bit outside of the box, and let's say, I want my red car to turn into a blue-purple color at 12 o'clock during the day, every day. So how does that work? Okay, well, now I need to investigate and go behind the experimentation piece that is needed, sort of like, okay, the sanding piece may be a little bit different. Now I need to put an undercoat of X or Y, but maybe this undercoat doesn't work. Maybe I need a liquid one. Is there a temperature measurement that is required? And how is that going to be automatic? And so now you're getting a little bit more into, okay, I'm outside of that comfort technological knowledge of, okay, it's just a red car, to now trying to increase your technological knowledge and be innovative in that space. And so that's those are the ones you build prototypes, then you experiment through it. You have a plan as to how you're going to undertake that experimentation, and then you come up with your advancement that perhaps nobody else has, but this is key and unique to you, and you have come up with some scientific or technological knowledge behind that work.
So is this R&D? I mean, we're talking about research and development. So if you're wanting to take your car and be able to change colors in midday, which now I want, if you have that, you're just trying to figure out how to do it. Is it available for just trying to figure it out, or do you have to have made some advancement in that lane to be able to get it?
So the advancement must be incremental, as small as it could be. So you're going to learn no matter what, right? So in the process of experimenting to achieve that goal of the difference in color at a specific time with specific parameters, in the process of that, you had learned some things. The undercoat maybe doesn't work. The specific temperature with the solar energy may not be specifically to what you need. Okay, well, now I need to do it. And it could be failure. Like you could fail. And that's okay for the SR&ED program. You're increasing your technological knowledge.
Okay, so basically, you can't just be like, decide to do this without actually researching in ahead of time to know that these are the things that I will require to research eventually.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to have a plan, or what the CRA calls a systematic investigation, which just means that you do have a plan as to how you're going to take that experimentation.
Right,
Okay.
but if you fail, it's not
Correct.
it doesn't. It's not like you're having to send the money back or something like that.
No.
Yeah, and then and so I actually I'm glad I have that clarification, because now I want to go into the industry and to sort of, if we could sort of dig into the examples under that R&D banner. So an advanced manufacturing. What's an advanced? I mean, it's written there, but what would be an example of advanced manufacturing?
Aerospace.
Airspace.
Right. So we're trying to. I think I just heard that we got a large, or Victoria Viking, I think, just got a large CRJ, I believe it was, contract, and so they're obviously trying to increase their not only their R&D but also their resources and whatnot. So that may be under advanced manufacturing. Aluminum, so aluminum, steel, any of those industries that are really manufacturing sector. There is a clean technology specifically, but you could be a manufacturer to all of these other ones as well.
Oh, I see.
Right?
So so advanced manufacturing would actually cover it sort of. Is it almost umbrella to a lot of these?
No, it's not an umbrella, but the economy strategy, let's kind of back up a bit.
Okay.
So the economic strategy tables were really developed through the federal government. And what the federal government said is, we have all of these companies across Canada. They really should all fit within, some tables or some specific categories. And so what they came up with was the economic strategy tables. And so if you are applying for any funding, so grants, repayable contributions, or whatever, the applications now all require you to identify which table you fall under. And so if you're an aerospace, for example, manufacturer, if you're oil and gas, if you're whatnot, you could hit one or more of these You have your primarily one. So going back to the aerospace, you could be, advanced manufacturer in the primarily one, but perhaps you have some digital response or a digital project that's coming up that really is key on the digital side of it. So even though your main business would be advanced manufacturing, the project itself is really speaking to the digital industries piece.
Right.
And so these would be available in most of the applications that we're seeing lately from the federal government.
So, apologies if it's a very rough example, but if you're in the aerospace and you like aerospace, so we can stay on that for a bit. If you are in that space, so you've increased your orders or your workload, so you want to expand and you want to expand with updated technology to increase your efficiency. So that would sort of go under the advanced manufacturing. Now, if you're wanting to implement some sort of monitoring technology that helps not only increase the efficiency on this side, but you want to identify issues before they become issues, that would probably fall under the digital industries.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. It could be, yeah. And it's just a matter of choosing one or the other, or whichever ones it is in the funding application.
Now, can you be funded, but you can be funded for both if you're expanding your manufacturing here, but also upgrading the monitoring technology. Could you get
could
both?
be, yeah, you could be. It's not one or the other. So
Right.
it just gives an idea to the government. And I think it's also for statistics as well. So who is submitting these applications? Do we have more advanced manufacturing companies trying to access the funds, or is it more on the digital side? So they will look at the application and they will identify that.
Right.
I couldn't say that it would be one or the other.
Right, but it could be both.
Correct.
It could happen.
Could you get blacklisted from applying to any grants?
That's a good question. I don't know that blacklist would be the word.
They'd use a nicer word.
I know.
Same thing, nicer word.
I guess.
No, I don't think so. I think that would be in the government's worst interest to do that.
Yeah.
I think that if companies are having trouble, they could either phone the specific office that is working with the fund, or they can phone us or whatnot. But I don't think that would be the case.
So if you made a mistake, like you just did something on the application that was just wrong, which I'm sure companies have done,
Yeah.
do you have an opportunity to correct it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very open, right? So you submit your application, you can email, and now email is great, and so then you can email one of the fund officers, or the fund has a general mailbox where you can email and say, oh, I submitted this, I should have said this, or whatnot. There's some that don't allow that, but that is just because of the volume that they are receiving.
Something that stands out to me with this, manufacturing or like agri-food and coupled with that digital and being able to apply for both is because we've had a lot of, especially lately, we have a lot of guests that are talking about, sensor-based technology, which the manufacturers don't it can be added to a pre-manufactured product. And I do wonder, especially on these, again, these 200 or less employees, these smaller operations, I wonder if they miss out on realizing that some of this digital advancement that they could make to make them a lot more competitive, I wonder how many of them are missing. And I'm sure you don't have those, stats readily available. But just I get a sense from talking to people in the industry, there is some disconnect with companies not realizing some of what is available.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we do see it. This shouldn't really be a showstopper when you're trying to apply for funding. The funding, something to keep in mind is that the funding is available to everyone. So whether you're a not-for-profit company, whether you're First Nations, whether you're women-led, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a small business, whether you're a young entrepreneur, there's funding available for everyone.
Right.
And so I wouldn't consider that this would be sort of a showstopper when you apply and you submit your application and you sort of mark down the incorrect one, as long as your project does have some good meat to it.
Yeah, let's go into so like agri-food. What would be an example of where that R&D funding or SR&ED, you call it SR&ED, right?
SR&ED.
SR&ED?
Yeah.
Yeah.
SR&ED.
What would be an example where that would fit in for agri-food?
So we are seeing quite a bit of the productivity improvement,
Right.
right? In, for example, farming. And so farmers are always trying to identify how do we remove pests as quickly as possible or identify pests before they even occur. Is there any technology out there that could help out with that? And so various ways of farmers or food manufacturers to bring in digital technology within their sort of otherwise older industry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, but older as in, it's not sort of a tech firm,
Right.
but definitely including some of that into their R&D. And now they're getting teams into, so how do we do it? And how do we find out? So they're hiring people that are obviously have that biotech or agri background, but that may also have some IT or technology education so that they can help them with that.
Right. Health and biosciences. I love these ones where I read it out, and as I read it, I go, "Oh boy, I don't know. I
Think
don't know
of
much about this." So this,
think about wearables. So health and bio, right? Like there's a lot of wearables. Like now you can prick yourself and find like a ton of things from one drop of blood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not everything, but they are looking at tremendous advancements in the medical health space, trying to help doctors. So how do I assess someone now? The interview with a doctor online is really more common than it used to be before. But definitely looking at that piece of the health. How do we keep seniors sort of alive longer with a better quality of life? And what does that mean? Does that mean that they're wearable materials for, an IoT? So IoT is huge in that as well because they could be sitting in a chair, they stand up from the chair. Oh, the chair identifies that they're not sitting anymore. It sends an alarm. An alarm goes to whoever the caregiver is. They can come in. There's access to their wherever they're sitting. Maybe it's a code that they put in. So there's quite a bit of technology going into the health space.
right? So that IoT and then you've got. I want to get down to the resources, but we talked a little bit about digital, but clean technology. Um, Again, this seems like something that would just. It's sort of. It seems like something that could be in agri-food or it could be in manufacturing. It sort of could be in multiple things. Is that right, or is this specific to a? Is this like could it be clean energy or clean technology for energy, or is
Absolutely.
this or is it a broad term?
It's a little bit broad, but right now, the latest one is the government providing some funding for people purchasing uh, Tesla vehicles or hydro vehicles or whatnot, right? And so, what the government is really looking at, okay, so would that mean transportation is going to become a lot more clean? So, SkyTrain, buses, what can we do to then help that and become, less carbon, less fuel, less diesel, and all sorts of things? So, that could be in there as well. Mining, oil, sort of definitely could fit into that for some of the practices that they're doing now at the
Right.
mine site. So obviously the health of the workers down in the mine is very key and critical. So that how do we help them achieve any sort of clean technology that could be available for them to work in a better, cleaner environment?
So, okay, so this is where I would need clarification on. So clean technology. So you say a mining. Now, if you're a mine that's switching over to electric powered heavy equipment, which is a major shift for those companies, in both the way they operate and the way they spend their dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Does that now? There's not really an R&D because if a company has already manufactured
That's
that
correct.
product, would it fall under the R&D?
No,
No, it
so
wouldn't.
no, it wouldn't. But there are some funding programs available that are very much geared to clean technology.
Okay.
And so then it may not be that someone on the agri-food can access them, but the clean tech space could. And again, it's just a matter of you choosing in your application which sort of fit you would have the best. It's not like one or the other, or it wouldn't be wrong. It's just where you see yourself or the project fitting
Right.
in
Oh,
the
oh so,
category.
so it might not go in the R&D space, but now it goes into
Correct,
which
into an other funding,
yeah,
just other funding available.
right. And so then resources of the future, that goes into. mining, energy, and I remember we talked off screen that could go oil and gas, can
That's
go up into
right.
the clean technology. Clean technology
Exactly.
can go into mining. It all can go. It's so much
Absolutely.
crisscross.
Yeah.
But what would be examples of within this resource of the future? What would be an example of
Yeah,
that?
so there's quite a bit of, again, we go back into that sort of crossover of digital.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is, yeah, this has been announced, but there's quite a few mining companies, or I know a couple of mining companies that have now sensors in their buckets.
Yeah.
And so they can identify how much of each of the minerals, metals, whatever it is that they're digging for is in that bucket,
Yeah.
which means an increase in revenue or a potential increase in revenue because they know on time, real time, what they have in there.
Yeah.
So a project could be, okay, the integration of this in a lower scale, in a larger scale, or maybe a subset of that. So even though when you're applying, you can say, okay, well, I'm a mining company and this is what I'm doing. So I'm really the researchers of the future. The project that you have may be a little bit of a crossover into digital because now you're including or involving that digital piece into your mining operation.
Right. Now I'm threading the needle a little bit on this, but if now, because we've had the sensor technology, we've had multiple people. Brent Hilscher's actually, he's been on the show twice,
Yep.
and he's so popular
Yeah.
that he's coming on again in a couple
Mm.
weeks.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
he puts together. He's an engineer who puts together the sensors on the buckets and on the ore processing and that. So I just wanted the clarity of if you're a mining company who's going to put that sensor. Now, it's a third-party company who's developed that technology.
Yep.
They've proven it. Now the mining company says, or the energy company, or whatever industry they're in, or an agriculture company says, okay, we're going to take this sensor, and this company is telling us it's proven, but now we have to actually invest in it and test it on ours. That would go under R&D because
It
it hasn't
could.
worked for you yet. Is
It
that right?
could.
It
It
could?
could.
Yeah.
It could
Huh.
up to the point where it works. And if it works, then you don't have a claim or you don't have an R&D. But
Up to the point where it works. So, and then if it works, then if you've increased your efficiency, then you and lessened your environmental footprint, then you can move into other grants once you've showcased that this.
right, exactly. Yeah,
I
but
think I'm getting this.
Yeah, it's so like I was talking to you yesterday about it. It's one of those topics that seem like I don't think people identify as boring, but it's because we don't understand.
Mhm.
It's like, what does all of this mean? And then the numbers and the abbreviations, and it's
Yes.
just it's too much.
I think people, well, sometimes, when there's, when we talk about, banking, accounting, and that, yeah, and the word boring does come up.
Yeah,
But I think it's also the word that people don't want to use is overwhelmed.
yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's not so much that it's a boring topic
No.
because people are very passionate about money. So it's
Yeah.
not that. It's just you look at something like when you first sent me the slide, I went, "Oh yeah." It's just
Yeah.
a lot of information,
Mhm.
and I think especially if you're what happens when you're running a company, and I've noticed because I've run a couple, and you have so many moving parts, and so that when this stuff sometimes comes across your desk, you just go,
yeah.
I don't. So I'm going to
Mhm.
go after something that I don't even really understand in hopes that I get it, as opposed to going out and talking to 2 or 3 clients
Right.
who are going to pay me money. And so it ends up
Absolutely.
being,
Mhm.
and that's what we hope, on the show, if 1 or 2 people
Yeah.
can watch this and go, oh, I could apply for this and that, and at least gets
Yeah.
them going.
Absolutely.
And so it clears away some of the sort of the fog and the cobwebs of what we're talking
the
about.
boring label.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I think it's exactly what you were saying that the biggest challenge is the people that don't know what they don't know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's exactly that. I had no idea. But how are you going to know if you don't sit down and investigate, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. And
It's-
and I think applying to, I mean, if we were to be applying to any of this on our own, I wouldn't have thought, oh, we fit in here, but we can also fit there. But then that other thing fits here. Like that would
Yeah.
have never crossed our mind. It'd be like,
Right.
oh, we can only do this.
Yeah, we're just an agri company. And
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit. There's this innovation, the superclusters. I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about the hard numbers first. Now, when we go and talk about all this research the R&D and that sort of stuff, how much money are we actually talking about? You know, is there millions of dollars? Like, how much is there to go around? Because like, you know, let's say 20,000 people watch the show, and out of those, 30 people all of a sudden start writing their applications. How much is there to actually go
Yeah.
around?
So that's a good question. On the SR&ED program, the program has been around for a long time. Lately, the number is about $13 billion across Canada. Most of the people that access the fund or the program are small, medium-sized businesses, so that would be 500 people and less. And they're looking at either a refund because you have the potential of getting a refund of cash for the work that you have done.
So you
Right?
can apply after you've done the
So
work as well?
you apply, yeah. So there's two
Oh,
types of funding. The SR&ED is only one, and I'll kind of say that in a second, but it's the only main program that you can retroactively request some funding for. All of these
oh.
other programs that we have been alluding to, you're really looking at forward going. So if you have a project that you know is going to start in the next few weeks or in the next few years, in the next few months, you really want to start looking at any potential funding now so that you can apply now and then get the okay to start the project. Now, you could have a project that had started and then request the funding for the money that you haven't spent yet. But going back to SR&ED, that one is for work that you have done previously that you can receive a refund or a tax credit, depending on what position your company is, against that project.
Yeah, but that's sort of unique to that
Correct, to that
program.
one program. Yeah.
Right.
And so then the answer to your question is, yeah, if everybody accessed the fund, I don't think that it would be depleted, that one.
Yeah.
It's, again, very specific criteria, very technologically inclined. There needs to be that science or technology behind it. And so I don't think that it would be depleted. It would definitely just speak to the fact that people may not be aware of it and that they should be
Yeah.
applying for it more.
Now it gets down to how you actually get it. So you apply. Who is making those decisions for who actually gets the money? At the end of the line, you apply, but there has to be there's a body or a person or somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah, so various funds have different ways of doing that. The SR&ED program is a tax credit program, so just think of it as your tax return. So if you spent money throughout the year, you save up all your receipts, you put them into either your accountant or yourself, or you put them all together, and then you file them with your tax return, and then you get a refund.
Right.
So that's really the mechanics of the SR&ED program. So it's a Revenue Canada program. You submit an application. The application has all of the technical elements that we discussed and some very specific key ones, some information. It goes along with your tax return. Your company officer, either the controller, financial person, or the owner of the company, depending on the size of the company, would sign on it. You submit all of your costs, and then the CRA receives it. The CRA does receive a tremendous amount of these throughout the year and at various times throughout the year. And so then they have they have specific criteria very quickly. Okay, everything's good. Yeah, next stage. Right. I mean, now is big data. It's all about how quickly can we process everything. And the government's getting on board, which is fantastic. So they do have that, first stage, second stage, third stage. If it hits some parameters, for example, if somebody that has never claimed before, the government may want to have a talk to them and say, okay, well, who are you? Where are you based? Maybe let's just go out and see who you are and what you're doing, and maybe let's have a look at the project. The government has technology people involved, so they have scientists or PhDs or whoever that are versed in the industry that you're filing the project under. And then it's just basically the whole thing about, okay, these are taxpayer dollars, so we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in providing the money back to the companies.
Right. Now there's this thing, and I think I'm sort of mixing up a couple different things, so I'll let you untangle the mess I'm making. There's these superclusters.
Yep.
And just the word superclusters, it's like okay, there's going to be
Overwhelming.
so they're they're making some sort of decision now. Is this a separate thing? Like
It
how
is,
these
yeah.
innovation? What it is that? Oh, you got it. You're
Yeah.
ahead of me.
Yeah, so these are different. So these are different from the funding programs. The reason why I put it here
Yeah.
is because what the government did a couple of years ago is said, look, we want to be the innovation hub of the world. We have to have global domination of innovation, pretty much. How do we do that? We know that there's these clusters or centers of excellence across Canada. How do we then bring Canada together and say, okay, we have a supercluster or a sort of center of excellence of agriculture, for example. Where are those companies aligned to it? Could we help in any way by putting, again, like a center of excellence or whatever? And they called it a supercluster. And so they went out and they said, okay, industry, we're going to choose 5 superclusters across Canada. We don't know what they are, but you guys can go ahead and put in your application, and then we'll let you know. They'll make the decision as to what are they going to be called, where they're going to be based.
Oh, okay.
So they had a tremendous amount of specific industries calling in or making submissions, and then at the end of the day, they came up and they announced that there's 5 superclusters across Canada. The bottom line is that there's centers of excellence that are trying to increase the innovation for each of the companies that are involved. Now, the question that we always get is like, okay, well, how do I access this funding? And it may or may not necessarily be funding, depending on the mechanics of them. So each one of these has got a certain amount of funding allocated to them on the federal government. And then they have these companies that are associated to them. So in BC, for example, we have the Digital Technology Supercluster. It was led by TELUS. TELUS put in the application and said, we need to be the digital supercluster. And they partner with Microsoft. They partner with a lot of the larger companies. And we can be the health and or the digital supercluster first.
Canada's not that, no, so that it's based in BC, but it's a Canadian.
Correct. And,
Right.
and that's the same for all of these. So these are across Canada, even though they're based in each of the provinces, because they need to
Right.
be based somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they're based in each of the provinces. But for the Digital Technology Supercluster, for example, they just had at the BC Tech Summit, they had companies from Halifax as well coming over and saying, hey, we want to partner with you, we want to work with you, how do we work together? So it's really is trying to be as far reaching across Canada as possible.
So okay, so TELUS led the way, and then
Yeah.
they partner up, and they actually put in. So they
So-
went out to all these companies. I see Shoppers Drug Mart on here. There's
Right.
So
yeah,
they
because
went
it's
out and get.
on the health side of things.
Oh,
So,
right,
so
yeah.
right. So
So
what
they
happened
gathered
was the
these com-
government said, okay, BC, you're going to be digital and health. So BC is digital and health. And that is across Canada. That's why Shoppers Drug Mart is in there as well.
I see. Okay.
And obviously UBC and whatnot.
Right. So now was again I thread the needles, but that's my job. So the TELUS was. Did they put the group together
No.
originally, or the?
They put an application into the government for all these superclusters.
Oh,
and
I
so
see.
TELUS put one in, Optel Group, Communitech, all of these ones put in different ones,
Right.
different applications. And then at the end of the day, the government was the one that decided how many superclusters there would be across
Oh,
Canada.
I see.
So basically, once they put in the application, and then we said, okay, you're right, we're going to have a super cluster of technology, and it's going to be based in BC. Then the rest of the companies came forward and were like, we are going to be part of
we'll
this.
be part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
it
see.
could be anyone from Halifax to
To
BC.
wherever.
That is all part of it. The question that comes up, and I think this will be where you're going, is how do companies that are small, medium size access the fund? Like, okay, so it's great that there's these superclusters. I'm a oil and gas company and a smaller company. I'm not like one of the conglomerates. How do I access this?
Right.
And the question is that it depends. So it depends on the project that you're doing. A lot of them really do want to partner with, so have the partnership of academia and industry. So
Right.
again, if you're oil and gas, but you have a project and you need sort of that academia validation, then perhaps you can put a project together that could be funded through some of these superclusters. Although we don't know how the funding is going to work just yet. Is quite new, but it is available for companies to
Oh, so this is
access.
a fairly
Okay.
new thing. This
It
is
is a
only
fairly new as far as, so it's not fairly new as it has been around since early last year, but is new as in these are now coming up with saying, okay, we're open for business. Come and show us your project. So as an example, the Saskatchewan one, the protein innovations, that one is open for project-based applications that could make a potential project in that space. So if you're an agri company and you're partnering with, or you have a really good one going back to fertilizers, so trying to identify, so, fertilizers that could get rid of pesticides, but that could also be good for the environment and whatever, and there needs to be quite a bit of research done. We need academia. Supercluster, is there any money in there? And then, so you apply, and then the Supercluster says, for this specific one, then they will say, okay, yeah, that's good. We will fund up to 50% of that project. And these are sort of like the checks and balances that need to happen for it. Go ahead and do that.
So this is an application. Is this is it like Dragon Den style? Do you eventually walk in, and is there an actual board that's voting on it, or how is?
It's not a voting. A lot of it is paperwork
Yeah.
until you actually make it to that next stage where they actually have to meet you and they have to know who you are and so on.
So you fill out an application, it gets through that process, but then eventually there is a representative from TELUS and Microsoft.
And that's for any fund, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the first stage is just saying, here, this is who we are, this is how much we want, this is our project. And then the government may say, okay, well, you don't quite fit into it, or yeah, okay, let's hear more about it. Where are you? Where are you from? Okay, let's go and visit you. Yeah, okay, this looks great. Cannabis is a big one right now, right? Like trying to do a lot of the research behind the actual strains and whatnot. And so
Right.
then, okay, well, government wants to know about that, and they want to go out and see that that you're really who you say you are. The project is there. You have a viable background, and so on.
Right.
And so, but ultimately, it is now. But in these superclusters, it's ultimately the group's decision, not the government's just funded
Correct,
it,
yeah.
but the group actually makes the
Exactly.
final choice.
Yeah,
It's quite interesting.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
what kind of people are sitting on the I guess the board or the decision makers? Like, are we talking the CEOs, the heads of R&D? Do you know what
It's a
kind
mix.
It's
It's
a
a
mix.
mix for all of them. I mostly know the last three. The first two, they're kind of haven't, or that I know of yet, haven't quite announced anything that they're open for. But the last three, I know that they're good people behind them.
Yeah. Um, it's very interesting. Has this funding started to be allocated yet, or is it now just
Just this year.
just this year? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that there's any. They have announced that they are funding projects, but they haven't actually funded anything yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I wanted you did touch on something though, and I wanted to clarify it. It's not necessarily just funding though. It could be
Correct.
that you want to work with
A partnership,
Right.
that you have an idea or you have a project, and you're saying, I want to work with tech, but I don't really know, if they even want my technology. I don't even know what they're doing. Perhaps they may be interested. Yeah, I know a few people, but maybe if I had the Supercluster behind me, then maybe they would be able to be more
Okay.
keen in helping me out. Maybe there's academia, maybe there's interest from someone else. So it's also the piece of the networking just to know who's who in the Sioux across Canada.
Yeah. And I think you touched on this, but is there a limit to the size of the company? Like, can Rogers go to the the Canadian Digital Technology Supercluster and say, "Hey, tell us we got this"? Like, is there
They could.
they could?
They
is,
could.
Is it? But so it's not geared towards smaller company.
No, it's everyone.
Yeah,
Everyone.
it's just an open thing.
I think I would say it the other way. It is open to small companies because smaller companies don't think that they should, or most of our clients are like, "Oh, that's
Right.
too big for me." No.
It's
you,
not- yeah.
You definitely should.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting actually. I looked at the numbers, 950 million available, and that's not each. That's across all
Correct.
five, right?
Correct.
So this is is this almost a little bit of a pilot project? Because 950 million is a lot, but it can get
But it's
chewed
not.
up
Yeah,
pretty
absolutely.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is. I think they want to see how it goes. I mean, this has been proven in other countries, so it's not like it's a new to the world kind of a thing. They're definitely trying to model behind other models that are available in different countries, and I think it's just a way of the government of saying, okay, we have this money available. Let's see how this works. I don't think it's going to go away though. Like, I
Right.
think it's definitely they're making strides to make it successful.
Yeah, I think this is, that just even on a personal level, this type of approach, the government, I realize that there needs to be an investment in innovation because if you don't, you'll eventually, other countries will. And there's really nobody that's funded as good as the government
Right.
because of the amount that they collect back. And so I think this sort of puts some onus. It's sort of that merging of private and so this
Yep.
kind of program. I always think like the government programs that are direct funding. Well, even like you're talking about, there's that application process, and it can really. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've seen it. That can get quite drawn out. Can get complicated, a mistake. But whereas this, you actually have direct to other businesses.
Right.
And so that must. I'm very excited to see what something like this could turn into.
We are too. Yeah, we're looking for results. So because that's really what's going to be the telltale behind it. So what are the results, and are you really increasing the innovation, or are you moving the dial in any way? And
Yeah.
what does that mean? What is the metric behind it?
Yeah,
For sure.
that's very exciting. I don't know. I don't know what the time feels like for you, but we've actually gone over an hour already,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
which is
Crazy.
great. Um,
Okay.
we so
It's a lot of information.
yeah, I think and I think there's a lot of stuff that we can get into. But
We
I
can
think
stop anytime.
I think we would need more time
Okay.
to really unpack it.
Okay.
But this is what the way that I gauge a show if there's good information is how much of it had I at least heard of, and some of the stuff I hadn't even heard of.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, in our space, we're kind of our ears to the ground more than some other companies would be,
Sure.
just because we're always looking for new people to come on the show and that.
Absolutely.
And so when we haven't heard of any of this, I know for sure there's other people that are
That
watching
haven't.
that have not
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you for coming on.
Sure.
You represent a very large company.
Mm-hmm.
And we're this this little podcast in this little space, and so to come on and share that information and take that time, it's really appreciated, both
Absolutely.
you and the company and KPMG. So I appreciate you coming on the
Yeah.
show.
For sure.
We're going to do a quick tee off to one of these cameras,
Yes.
and so thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are we on this one?
Yes.
That was fun. I actually love this kind of stuff.
It is.
It's showing how the actual flow of economic cash flow actually works within a country, because a lot of people, it stops with their at their front door
Yeah.
in their little bubble. But an episode like this, I feel like it sort of connects through how the government systems, and then like the things like the superclusters, the R&D funding, and how it all actually flows together. I find it really interesting.
No, it is. It is. Like I said before, it's a topic that's so overwhelming. And especially when you hear money and you go and you don't understand and you're like, oh no, what if I do it wrong? What if I can't get in? It's overwhelming. But so once you understand, it's very different.
Yeah.
It's just completely and it's not that complicated.
Yeah, and then it becomes fun.
Yeah. It's
Who would have thought?
What I thought, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna sit there and I have no idea what's happening. But then you start listening to it and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I could read this and I can understand now.
I liked that blacklist question that you asked. I like that because I know for companies, when you're trying to go out and you're getting involved with the government, you're talking that, you go, okay, what if I make a mistake? What if I put some information that it gets read wrong? But then,
Yeah.
and even that clarification that you can
make
apply.
mistakes.
And especially with these companies now that are coming together, that are distributing on behalf of the government, they'll have a better understanding. So there's so many levels to it.
Yeah.
Where can people? Our shows are just going to keep getting better.
They are. Every
I'm not very
and
good at my
remember, it's
promos.
every Friday. Actually, are we moving to like twice a week?
Well, we're doubling up right now because we have so many people that we want to get on the show, and it's complicated to book people out, especially companies, like 6 months out.
Yeah.
Plus, sometimes people get sick or they can't make an episode, so we end up missing a week. So we're doubling up for a few months at least.
Yeah.
Thursdays
Okay.
and Fridays, so that we have a stockpile of. So we're going to be
That'll
busy.
fun.
Where can people go to follow us?
Well, I will give you that in a minute, but just remember that the Crownsman podcast is here to not just, promote our show, but we're also here to promote and help you produce your own show. So if you've got a great idea, but you don't know how to kind of get started or you need a little bit of help, we're here to help you. So bring your great idea over to us and we'll get you started. We've got great, affordable, and flexible plans or options, I should say. So definitely give us a call or email us info@crownsman.com. Visit our website, crownsman.com. And you can listen to the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Castbox, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I feel like every time I always forget something.
Places where they play
Yeah.
podcasts.
You can watch the podcast
Yeah.
on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also join the Facebook group, the Crownsman Podcast. We love to share all kinds of things there. You can share your own links and your own podcasts on there too. We'd love to watch them, hear them. Yeah, so just shout out to us. Oh, and on social media at Crownsman P.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
and that's all. It's basically all Instagram and all
Yeah,
that sort of
all
stuff.
throughout. Yeah.
We post up little stories. We'll do like little after show reviewing the shows and all that sort of stuff. So lots of fun. That is episode 28. Thank you for watching. We will see you on the next episode.